Are we allowed to talk while this is playing? Or is that
No.
disrespectful?
That's disrespectful to Tho and national champion Georgia.
I don't even want to say welcome to Clock Management because you were making fun of the way I said it last week. But welcome to Clock Management, y'all.
So deadpan.
I believe we're live. We live?
We are live, yes.
Sweet. This week, as you can see, we're without our good friend Buck. He is not quite into the college game as we are. But we got myself, we got Justin, and we got defending national champion Tho Bishop with us. Oh, you're muted.
We'll woke up a champion. We'll go to sleep a champion, and we'll do that until I can no longer say that's true.
At least until January. Yeah, January. The second week of January, third week, whenever.
It's the second week of January 2024, maybe. We'll see.
That's a preview of what's to come. So we might as well dive right in. And I'm thinking...
Hold on, let me ask the question before we get too far in.
Right,
Since we were talking about this pre-show, and Tho has a hard out at the end, so I don't want to waste too much time and miss the opportunity. I was looking at the Mississippi State schedule, and there is a game on November 12th, which I don't work that weekend, and it's at Mississippi State, and I can get some pretty decent tickets that are like row 5. And I was thinking that my son has never been to a Mississippi State game, and it might not be too long of a drive for the good Tho Bishop to come up and we all meet and go to a Mississippi State, Georgia football game.
That is a game that my brother and I have actually had circled on our schedule as our potential big road trip game of the year. Love Mike Leach, my favorite coach outside of Kirby. So yeah, that is a game we have been talking about for a few months now. So I'm definitely very much interested. I'm potentially making that trip up.
Awesome. He's never been to a game. When I was doing like the backgrounds and stuff, I had Davis Wade Stadium pulled up, and I was like, "This is where I went to a bunch of football games." And he goes, "Oh, that's awesome. I want to go to a game there." It's like, well, maybe we should do that sometime. So.
Yeah. What is considered the better atmosphere between Mississippi State and Ole Miss?
Well, let me just preface this answer with "fuck Ole Miss," and that's all you really need to know.
All right.
Okay, so
I have a cool atmosphere too.
I've been to more basketball games at Ole Miss than football games. Basketball game wise, Mississippi State definitely has the edge as far as the atmosphere goes. I haven't been to enough football games at Ole Miss to draw a good comparison.
Fair.
I've only been to the Grove once when I was very young. So I've not made it up to Stark Vegas, but I do know it's a unique one.
It's a lot of fun.
I was actually going to jump into the SEC, so this is a good transition. We should. Last week we kind of saved the best conference and divisions for last, and I think we should jump into the best first, since some of us, so we're not rushing through the good ones at the end here.
I mean, we can just kind of gloss over the Big 12 and the Pac-12 or whatever they are.
Yeah. I mean, it's really an SEC Big Ten show here, but there are some interesting aspects to those leagues as well. And obviously, we don't have to go team by team. I mean, if you guys know something about Vanderbilt, I know next to nothing. I'm not even sure who their coach is.
I know they put up a 60 burger off the mainland. Traveling.
They had a good start.
Yeah.
But yeah, we want to just run through like who we think will contend in each of their divisions and the league, who ultimately wins out the league, and then also just maybe some interesting things about some teams that we find interesting in these leagues as well. So what about it though? Is it the Georgia-Bama show in the SEC again?
We'll see. I mean, obviously it's difficult to bet against Bama in the West. Their competition's rising up. They're going to be on point every single game in the SEC West. Where Georgia, I think, has a little bit more leeway. I mean, you have interesting offenses with both Lane Kiffin and Mike Leach in Mississippi. You've got an Arkansas team that, I mean, I thought from the get-go that Sam Pittman was a sneaky good hire. That is looking better over time. I mean, someone's going to build the trenches. You got Texas A&M with the $10 million football team over there. That's going to be a fun revenge game. I have a feeling it's not going to work out very well for Jimbo. When it comes, if there's one game that Alabama's going to be on, it's going to be that one. Auburn was interesting at the end of last year. I mean, they're the team in constant disarray. No boosters get in way of program stability quite like the Auburn Tigers. So I expect Alabama to be there in December, but it wouldn't surprise me at all. I mean, you got Brian Kelly. I'm glad he's abandoned the fake Southern accent now. Not returning letters, but I'm glad I'm not an LSU fan. I have to root for Brian Kelly, that asshole, on a weekly basis. So I assume Alabama's gonna be fine. I mean, if not, Nick Saban's been putting up excuses. On the East side, though, I just don't think anyone else is gonna. I think this is an undefeated regular season for Georgia. I don't think, again, I think Mississippi State is one of the more interesting games on there. But what's going to be interesting this year is that Georgia's going to be a team that puts up points along with a defense that's going to have a little, it's got a little bit of youth on it. It doesn't have, obviously you lose 5 first-round talents. That hurts the defense. But last year Georgia was off, was up so big in the second half. And we got a lot of play time for a lot of our defensive talent, a bunch of 4- and 5-star recruits up and down that defensive set, that defensive backfield there. So I think Georgia's going to coast, but the West I think is going to be a lot more interesting.
I mean, the SEC West is arguably the best division in college football. Period. Like when the two teams at the bottom of the division are going to be Auburn and LSU in all likelihood. I don't see Brian Kelly, at least in his first year, transitioning super well into the SEC, especially coming into the West. And also, they're not a great team. Orgeron didn't have a whole lot, and I don't feel like what they picked up is going to translate this year. Like I think in 3 years they'll probably be really good, but for the next couple of years it's going to be a struggle, especially playing in that division. Especially if like Texas and Oklahoma come over sooner than 2025, then it could really get interesting. But so like we're looking at coming into Bama at the top, and then it's kind of a toss up with Ole Miss. As much as it pains me to say it, Ole Miss is going to be really good. Lane Kiffin has done an excellent job. Texas A&M is going to be strong. Arkansas is going to be really strong again, following up on the kind of surprise season that they had last year. And Mississippi State's probably going to finish in the bottom 3 or 4 in that division, and they have a really strong team too. Like it's a stacked division, so we'll see. I do think Bama is definitely the favorite in the West, and then the East, it's obviously Georgia, and then I think it's after Georgia, it's a toss up between Kentucky and Tennessee. I think they're both going to be very good and very competitive, have strong seasons, possibly even they could possibly both finish with 10 win seasons, or at least 8 or 9 for sure. And then after that, I don't know. I just don't have a lot of faith in South Carolina. They're going to be better this year, but
they're going to have a quarterback that's not a coach. So
I've been hearing that supposedly South Carolina was going to be better since like 2007, and it'll happen one of these days.
They had a good 3-year stretch with Spurrier there, but
an old ball coach.
Yeah, and then Vandy. I mean, I think they just play football to get some revenue sharing off the league or something.
You got to have that one punching bag, that one Rutgers. Although Rutgers probably won't be the worst team in the Big Ten this year. I'm curious. You bring up Brian Kelly. I don't like Brian Kelly either. I don't think many people like Brian Kelly.
Brian Kelly likes Brian Kelly.
Brian Kelly likes Brian Kelly. That his wife probably doesn't, though.
Was there a fan base in the country less excited about hearing Brian Kelly than LSU?
It's interesting. Before he was at Notre Dame, Cincinnati, Central Michigan, he was at the small, what was then Division II college called Grand Valley State, which I grew up from like 5 minutes away from. He won like a couple of national championships, late 90s, early 2000s. There we would go to the games. They actually sent some people to the league. But my dad's an LSU fan. So he's been following Brian Kelly up here, now down to his team in Louisiana. But I don't know. He's trying to act excited about the Brian Kelly era, but I don't know. I understand why he made the decision to leave Notre Dame. I think he actually got as much out of Notre Dame as he's going to get But
That's the thing. Too. I mean, LSU is one of the few programs that's an upgrade from Notre Dame, right? And you've got a monopoly over a very talent-rich state. I mean, you've the last 3 head coaches won national champions. So like, it is a special program in its own right. It's a great environment to be in. But yeah, it's
the fall that they've had from like numbers wise, one of the greatest college teams ever to now is that's pretty crazy. But I mean, you look at the guys how they're performing in the league. I mean, they lost a lot of guys off of that national championship team.
Well, and if you watch LSU, I mean, they kind of go through these ebbs and flows. Like they'll be good for a few years, and then they kind of drop off for a few years. You know, they never like completely fall out where they're Vanderbilt or South Carolina style. Like, you know, you chalk it up as a win every week, but they do go through their ups and downs year in and year out. And you know, they could be in one of those. Like I said, I think they're probably in like a 2 to 3 year little dip, and then they'll come back strong and they'll really kill for about 5 years, and then they'll probably dip again. Like that's just kind of I think that's just kind of the way the talent flows in the state, especially the way they recruit. Like I think that's just a Louisiana thing. Like their recruits the recruiting classes go up and down in their really strong states that they recruit in down there. So I think it's more a symptom of what they have to pull from, more so than the team itself or necessarily the coaching.
Well, it also kind of reflects where college football is right now, because like I mean, you're now dealing with a national sport, right? Your recruiting base is no longer just your state, right? You have people coming in poaching. It doesn't matter where you are. You can be UT Austin, right? And you're still going to have Florida and Alabama and USC coming into Texas in your backyard, taking 5-star quarterbacks out from Friday Night Lights. And so like that's why LSU had to make the change they did. I mean, Ed Ogeron, he talks like a I mean, he's a great coon ass.
Seems like he was made to be LSU's coach.
I was gonna say, just say it. Like Orgeron is 100% coon ass. That's who he is, and that's what they needed at that time.
System builder, like you need a system builder there, and like that's a unique skill set right there. I mean, there's still a lot of players, a lot of teams out there that just a lot of big programs. They just don't have. I mean, it's building a kingdom right there, and you have to be constantly churning out the recruiting side of things. I mean, you even see like Kirby Smart. I mean, he's out there campaigning against the Jacksonville annual game in the Florida Georgia showdown because that takes away a weekend every other year that would otherwise be a home game in Athens to give the full college tour down. I mean, he's having to make. I mean, he's willing to sacrifice decades of tradition for those marginal gains so he can't be out competed by a Nick Saban or a Lincoln Riley. And that's where big boy college football is right now. And like that's something where, it takes more than being a great offensive play caller. Like Dan Mullen showed this, right? Like, I mean, Dan Mullen's probably one of the smartest offensive play callers you have in the country, and he's out of a job because he couldn't recruit in Florida. I think that's one of the interesting stories too in the SEC. I think Florida's going to be a disaster.
It seems like Napier seems like a weird fit for Florida.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because like Napier was one of those guys that was on the radar, right, for being like the LSU guy. Oh, he's homegrown talent. He's got connections with LSU, with Louisiana recruiting. Even though I don't think Louisiana. What was he? Monroe, Lafayette, whichever the Louisiana. Yeah, like that's not quite the same caliber of recruiting LSU does. But now he comes into the SEC. I don't know if you've looked at his offensive play caller is an offensive line coach. Like they're a team with 2 offensive line coaches, which they don't have that play caller. They don't have that Steve Spurrier. They don't have that Urban Meyer. They don't have that Dan Mullen. And
he doesn't run a flashy offense. Yeah,
they're going to run slow. I mean, it's going to take. I mean, I'm glad they got a new fancy student facility for the help with recruiting. Looks great. I mean, maybe over time that recruiting side of things, but he's losing major recruiting battles. Just last year. Once he was in the job. So I think Florida's a team that, I hate, it just pains me to say it. But I think Florida's pains are not going to go around, go away anytime
really
soon.
Struggling with their struggles.
Oh yeah.
Well, I was looking at some other like ESPN and Fox Sports and some of the other like rankings and Bleacher Report, some of those, and everybody's like kind of high on Florida, thinking they could potentially finish like 3-4 in the East. I'm like, what are they looking at? Like that team completely quit on Dan Mullen, and it wasn't a great team to begin with. Like that, I don't see it. Like I really think I think it'll be Florida and South Carolina battling it for the next to last in the East, just above Vandy. Like I just don't see it.
and then that's one of my favorite bets right now for this weekend is that you can get Florida -2.5, and the over under I think is what 51, something like that. Like I'm taking the under on the points. I'm taking Utah. I'm taking Utah with the
Utah's got a
points
good
there.
team.
I mean, I think they're going to come in. They're going to punch them right in the face.
Mhm.
And for one, I'm expecting a low-scoring game in any right. Again, I think Florida's going to run slow offense. Utah's kind of a more powered team than a Lincoln Riley air you out. But like I think they're coasting a lot off of high expectations. And I think Utah's a what top 10 team last year.
Yeah.
So I think that's going to be. I think that's easy money right there. Is betting Utah in the under.
There we go. You mentioned Jimbo earlier. I mean, he's loading up on these historical recruiting classes, but I still not sold on Jimbo as a coach either. You see, like how he left Florida State. Like, isn't that indicative of sort of the programs he builds? Like, I'm not. I mean, they're going to get some wins because they are so talented, but I don't see them contending for a playoff spot this year.
You're still dealing with quarterback issues, right? Like, I mean, Jimbo's success at FSU came as a byproduct of Jameis Winston. Winston's he's a wild man, right? I mean, he's still in the NFL, right? I mean, maybe his time with Sean Payton's kind of want him down, but he's kind of a Brett Favre type of quarterback, but a tremendous talent. I mean, an incredible college quarterback. Back LSU when he won it with Saban, right? You had Jamarcus. Who was the quarterback he won it? But you had extremely talented quarterbacks. And Jimbo hasn't developed anyone yet. Kellen Mond just got released by the Minnesota Vikings his second year in the league. And they're still for all the talent they're buying up on the lines, things like that. That's great. It's definitely a way to build a football team. I mean, it's interesting that someone like a Jimbo Fisher was never in the running for like an Arch Manning, right? He's not the one that's getting these 5-star quarterbacks coming in, and that's kind of telling its own right for alleged offensive guru Jimbo Fisher.
Yeah. So I also think it's Bama out of the West and Georgia out of the East, and I don't think Saban's going to lose 2 games in a row. But then there's probably going to be another rematch a few weeks down the road anyway. So we'll have 2 straight years of 2 Alabama-Georgia matchups is what I'm guessing.
Modern college football is not one for parody.
Yeah. Are you worried at all about Georgia losing? How many players do they lose on defense?
I get 5 first-rounders. I mean, it's up and down. I mean, lots of tremendous amount of talent. I mean, arguably though the best player on Georgia's defensive roster last year, Jalen Carter's still on the team. He's an incredible nose tackle. We kept some talent in the linebacking core. Again, have a lot of experience that we got last year. We got a freshman defensive end that is gaining rave reviews and things. I mean, Kirby Smart's just going to coach him up. We have. I mean, one of the interesting things that Georgia has in its advantage is that we've got Will Muschamp. As one of our co-defensive coordinators. I mean, once upon a time, Will Muschamp was the most celebrated defensive mind in football. I have a feeling he's not going to get a big-time head coaching gig anytime soon after what happened in Florida and South Carolina, but he's also a former dog in his own right. Athens is undefeated as a, if you're a coach in Athens, you're pretty good there. Even the wives like it, which is always important. I think that's a big reason why we still have Todd Monken, who I think is the secret to our success. I mean, this was a guy that was putting up 5,000 yard. When Jameis Winston has 5,000 yard season with Tampa, right? It was Todd Monken. I mean, he is someone who just cranks out offensive production. He's a former NFL coach. I mean, he just signed an extension late in his career. I don't think he's going to leave Athens. Our coaching staff is so good at developing this young talent, and the young talent just keeps filling in the program. Thanks to the way that Kirby, no one's going to out recruit Kirby Smart. We're not going to get every player on the board. Again, I hate that we lost Arch Manning, but no one's going to out recruit him. No one has a better process in place for getting that talent. So that's why I'm not too worried there. The big story I think is going to be offense. Like I think Stetson Bennett's underrated still to this day, and I was doubting him all last year. So you can't put me in that camp. But when we walk out there with a 4 tight end set. I mean, our tight end room is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, Brock Bowers is one of the best offensive players in the country, regardless of position. I mean, as a freshman phenom last year, and was just making people look silly. We've got Eric Gilbert coming in, former LSU guy, just a massive physical freak. We've got Daryl Washington, who is like 6'7", 6'8", just a mountain of a man. Then we have a rookie that's in there, a freshman that just came in and was blowing up G-Day. Just looks great. It's like we can go 4 tight end sets, which you think about what you can do there. What I love about football, right? Great football offenses are when you can maximize your playbook with the same skill set, right? And so with those players that we have, I mean, we could walk out there, you could run tight, a tight, rush heavy sort of format. You could split them out wide and put them all out as wide receivers. I mean, we're not losing much athleticism by keeping our tight ends in there with the wide receivers. We have extra blocking in there for the running game. I think what Georgia's going to do on offense is what's going to surprise a whole lot of people, which makes Stetson Bennett as a Heisman candidate.
Oh, there we go.
Last time I checked, it was 66-1 odds. If that is not the future play of the year, I don't know what is.
Nice. Yeah, Will Muschamp is kind of like Lane Kiffin's dad in that he's a great coordinator, not a head coach.
Yeah. Since Tho did bring that up, the Heisman, I think a dark horse Heisman is going to be the Tennessee quarterback. If that offense really rounds itself out and he performs really well again this year, and they can stay in the top 25 and put up good numbers, I think he has a chance to make a run at the Heisman.
He had something like a 31-3 touchdown interception ratio. Yeah, he had some good numbers.
Yeah, he had some really good numbers for a decent team last year. Like they're as much as it also pains me to say that about Tennessee, they are trending in the right direction and could be very good this year. So I think that'll be something interesting to pay attention to.
Tennessee had no business being as good as they were last year. I mean, it's a team that transfers out the wazoo. I mean, dealing with one of the most, chaotic couple years. I mean, when you consider, remember they hired Greg Schiano for like 2 days, and then fans rebelled. Then you have Phil Fulmer mounting a coup within the athletic department to install himself as AD. They hired the former defense, Jeremy Pruitt, right?
Did they try to bring Leach in at one point too?
Maybe so. I mean, he would have. I don't think they ever interviewed him. I think like that was thrown out there as a possibility, but they never interviewed him. I'm absolutely convinced that Phil Fulmer brought in Jeremy Pruitt for the intentional, with the objective that Jeremy Pruitt was going to punch someone at a bar, right? Like he has his reputation for being kind of a hot-tempered guy, and that Phil Fulmer was going to be able to reclaim the coaching gig. I absolutely believe that was Phil Fulmer's intentions. I don't put it past them at all. Didn't work out. They all cleaned house. Fulmer's gone too. But yeah, Hooker, 50-1 odds right now on betonline.ag. We need to get a referral code there. But yeah, no, he's someone. Again, particularly if Tennessee ends up being a close, goes 10-2, very close there in the East. I could definitely see that one. I thought Heupel. I didn't think much of him at UCF. I thought he was a massive downgrade from the formerly great Scott Frost. But what he was able to do last year with it's kind of like Mississippi State. It's a different sort of offense. You have to scheme for it a different way. It's like basketball on grass. But I know that first quarter in the Georgia game last year gave me a little. That was one of the few times actually I had to worry last year seeing their offense fly.
Well, Schiano and Scott Frost were mentioned, which means the Big Ten is near.
Yes.
Scott Frost already after week 0 is throwing his assistant coaches under the bus. I don't know if you guys saw that. So I almost put money down on Northwestern. I was like, Nebraska always loses these games, so of course they're going to lose. I think Nebraska's like a 9-point favorite, or were they double-digit favorite?
Yeah, they were 11.
11-point favorite. I was like, yeah, I should put money on Northwestern. I didn't, and I should have. But after the game, Frost, so they hired Whipple over from Pittsburgh. After the game, Frost goes, yeah, our offensive play callers need to learn how to be a little more creative in this league. So he's kind of a dead man walking.
Yeah.
Wow. But the other guy I mentioned, Schiano, is actually, we don't have to spend a lot of time on Rutgers, but it's Shiano is also, he's kind of like Brian Kelly, and he's not a likable guy, but he's actually a decent coach, and he actually fits really well with Rutgers. Like,
Yeah.
I think he's like one of the few guys who could actually succeed at Rutgers.
The fact he never got a second chance, really. I mean, like the Tennessee thing was crazy. Like, I mean, Shiano was. I mean, like, you know, he was a guy that, like, you know, Miami, you know, was courting for a while. You know, I get that he went to Tampa Bay and that didn't go great. You know, but you know, Shiano's a good football coach. You know, be able to turn what he's you know, able to wring out every little bit of talent that Rutgers has.
Yeah,
doing it again.
I mean, he made Rutgers a respectable football program at one point. Like, you know, he's not a bad coach. Yeah, and he wasn't a terrible coach at Tampa Bay. Like, he did a lot of dumb shit, but he also didn't have a great roster, and they were competitive while he's there. Like, so he has a good record as a good coach. What was the whole Tennessee thing? It was like Clay Travis started the whole movement to get rid of him over some sort of like bullshit. I can't remember what it was.
I don't remember what it was either.
It was all this drama about how the Haslam family was Governor Haslam of Tennessee, and you know, his brother Jimmy has the Browns after, you know, robbing a whole bunch of truckers of money with Flying J. Basically, the Clay Travis didn't like the hire. A lot of Tennessee fans didn't like the hire, and like there was this whole power battle between some of the big boosters like the Haslam family, some of the politically connected, and like the Mannings were like providing cover for the hire. And then so like the Fulmer, like the Fulmer clan kind of working through Clay Travis kind of mount enough of like an outrage where the AD got ousted, and that's what led to Fulmer's arrival. Shiano's contract gets nixed. It was Auburn level drama right there in the Tennessee. You had the big rock that they have on campus, like being paid, you know, screw Shiano and that sort of stuff. I mean, it was wild to see. I mean, that's that's released the Snyder Cut levels of fandom, you know, organizing there. That was really a crazy period.
So it should come as no surprise that out of the Big Ten East, I will be having Michigan come out as defending champions, not only of the East, but of the Big Ten. I am a bit of a homer, but we do lose the number 2 pick in the draft, and Aiden Hutchinson, and the other end, our other guy, Ojabo, who, if he wouldn't have gotten injured in the compound, probably would have went first round as well. And then also a first round safety. So defense, lose a lot. Michigan's usually good at reloading on defense. And we did lose the defensive coordinator, but basically brought in the same Ravens system guy who was on like the Ravens staff a few years ago with McDonald. Offense. So we got the poor man Stetson Bennett, which is Cade McNamara. He's the kind of the unathletic, not super flashy guy, pretty accurate with the ball, being pushed from former 5-star J.J. McCarthy. And Harbaugh just announced over the weekend that he's going to start McNamara in the first game, and he's going to start McCarthy in the second game. And then obviously the first thing that comes to my mind is the old adage: if you don't have starting quarterback, you don't have any quarterback, or however that goes. So I'm a little nervous about that, but they actually did a good job last year with splitting between the two. McCarthy has a strong arm, but he's also got wheels. He could run a little bit. And then they're actually pretty loaded at receiver, which is not something I'm too used to seeing at Michigan. They have a guy. So Ronnie Bell was Michigan's leading receiver in 2019 and in 2020. Last year, opening game, he tears his ACL in the first half, like scoring a touchdown, receiving touchdown, almost like bringing a punt return back. Then, I mean, that was bad for last year, but it actually helped the other guys behind him develop. And all those guys are back too. Lose Hassan Haskins, who was rated, Tyler was bringing up Pro Football Focus earlier. He was rated the number 1 or 2 running back in PFF last year, scored 5 touchdowns against Ohio State. But they get the number 2 or 3 running back in Pro Football Focus back in Blake Corum. Haskins was more of a Thunder guy. Corum's a Lightning guy. And then they also have a former 5-star as Corum's backup, who's also a Lightning guy. So we're missing like a Thunder guy in the backfield. But still pretty, I think our offense will take a step forward and perhaps kind of like mediate the losses on defense. Obviously, it could be undefeated Michigan playing undefeated Ohio State in that game. and we could potentially see like a similar scenario play out between Ohio State and Michigan as what happened with Alabama and Georgia last year.
One of the biggest things helping and hurting Michigan kind of in that dynamic there is that they've got the easiest schedule in college football, I think, right?
Yeah.
Eight home games, the non-conference schedules, Colorado State, Hawaii, UConn. And so that's one of those things where if Michigan loses to Ohio State, I think it'd be very difficult for them to win kind of that fourth spot. But I mean, the season comes down against the Buckeyes, which, as seasons tend to go. And I mean, Harbaugh got that monkey off his back last year. And so again, I think Harbaugh's another great coach. Again, not the easiest guy to get along with, but put him in a vacuum. I mean, I think it's hard to make the argument for Ryan Day over Jim Harbaugh. I mean, Ryan Day inherited a very well functioning machine. I don't think he's a bad coach, but I don't see anything about him that shows that he's an exceptional coach. And I think what Jim Harbaugh's done with Michigan is far more impressive than anything Ryan Day has done to date with that Ohio State program.
And the game, other than the going to Columbus at the end, that it worries me is obviously the trip to Iowa, because that's where dreams go to die. Ohio State has gone there. Penn State has gone there as undefeated top 5 teams and have lost. It's a tough place to play. But the one redeeming factor is I think that's like the best matchup in the Big Ten slate that week, which means that there'll be like the big noon Fox kickoff. And Kinnick's not as scary as a night game is there. So we might be saved by it being the best matchup.
That was going to be my only real contribution to this conversation, because obviously, like, Michigan, Ohio State is going to be whichever one of them wins the conference is going to be the one that goes to the playoffs. I just don't have a lot of confidence in any of the rest of the Big Ten this year. I think Iowa's going to have a good year. I know Wisconsin is generally being favored in that division, but
in the West,
I really feel like Iowa always seems to have find a way to be a really good football team, and I think they've got a lot of potential to do that again this year and to come out of the West.
Iowa does the every other thing. So they made it to the Big Ten championship last year, which means this year they'll be like 7-5, but with a big win in there somewhere. The West is tricky. I think Wisconsin is kind of fading a bit. People were high on Nebraska, but I don't trust Scott Frost at all. No one should trust Scott Frost at this point. Purdue is interesting, and Minnesota are interesting to me out of the West. I like the offensive system at Purdue. They have a good quarterback. Played really well against Tennessee last year. They beat Tennessee in that bowl game. It was one of the better bowl games of the year. And then Minnesota's just got a whole bunch of like 6- and 7-year seniors because of COVID. They return quarterback who's probably nearing 30, who had a really good year in like 2019 when they had 11 wins.
That means
they had 9 wins last year, so they could be pretty good too. What's that?
So that means he'll be mature and composed. Like he'll be able to stand in there and hold his own. He won't get scared.
And there's also Bielema at Illinois, and I have a soft spot in my heart for Bielema, even though they didn't really work out at Arkansas.
I do like Purdue a lot. I don't think they're a contender to win the West, but I do think they will be very competitive and have a solid year. With my wife and her entire family will be happy to hear me say that. They're all big Purdue fans.
So you're picking Ohio State or Michigan?
I think that the Illinois team I think is kind of I think Brett Bielema is a good coach there. It's a crime that the Big Ten is not like Big Ten should just get away with the divisions entirely. You look at the East and the West, it's just insane. Like the 4 best teams, Michigan, Michigan State, Ohio State, Penn State. Again, you can throw in the occasional Iowa, Wisconsin, kind of depending on what year it is. Purdue occasionally, but like I mean. Those are going to be the 4 teams. Mel Tucker, of course, a product of the Kirby Smart coaching tree. They should just get rid of the divisions entirely.
Penn State, I don't trust James Franklin. He always shows up on people's like top 10 coaches list, and I don't understand why. And he was rumored last year to go to USC, and I was like, why in the world would USC want to bring this guy in? So I never trust Penn State. And they're getting a little bit of hype this year, which they do every year. And then With Ohio State, you're talking about Ryan Day earlier. I think if Ohio State if they don't make the playoff this year, I think you might see a scenario where Day leaves for the NFL, and then Luke Fickell comes in.
I can see that.
This is my prediction. I was going to say the Cowboys, but I think Sean Payton might go to the Cowboys. So.
Let's mark the real question is: we got Notre Dame at Ohio State, or playing Ohio State this weekend. Ohio State is a 17-point favorite. How do you like that line? Because I mean, this is like what a top. What's Notre Dame ranked? Yeah, top 7.
Top 5, I think. Yeah.
Top 5. Yeah, so that is quite a line. Where would you be putting your money on that one? I think
Ohio State wins, but I don't think they cover. I think it's going to be like a 40-27 type game. Ohio State's they bring in the defensive coordinator from Oklahoma State, who's a good coach, but it's obviously a brand new system. And they have the same guys as they did last year in defense. And I don't think that they're going to, I think Notre Dame's going to be able to go up and down the field on Ohio State, especially in like the first half. And then Ohio State's offense kind of carries them through in the fourth.
Yeah, I can see it being a 2-touchdown game, but 17.5, is that really the line still? That's a lot.
Yeah, it's now 17 without the hook right now on
Columbus.
BetOnline.ag.
Obviously, Notre Dame's we can talk about Notre Dame if we want. They got Marcus Freeman as their new coach.
He better have a good year, or else Urban Meyer might be lurking there in the background. That's all I got to say.
Yeah, I could see that. Freeman, I think, he's a former Ohio State player and
linebacker.
Yeah. So there could be there's a little bit of a motivational tool there. But I don't know if Notre Dame's going to finish in the top 5. I could see them losing that game. I could see them losing down the road to USC because I think Lincoln Riley will have them humming a bit by the time they meet. And I think does Notre Dame play Clemson this year? They might. I'm not sure. I don't know. I could see like a 9-3 year for Notre Dame. So I don't think they're starting in the top 5. I don't think they're finishing in the top 5.
Yep. They play November 5th.
Yeah, I agree with that on Notre Dame. I don't think they finish that.
And they lost their quarterback, who, I mean, he wasn't great, but I think he broke the record for wins or something. I can't remember his name. And the running back.
Well, speaking of Clemson, how do you guys think of the ACC?
There. So the ACC reminds me of remember Pac-12 After Dark. The ACC kind of reminds me of that sort of vibe, I guess, to where they have they're becoming more fun. It's not just good Clemson and all the other guys. I like Cristobal going to Miami. I think that he's going to get that program. I don't think they're going to be great this year, but I think he's going to get that program up and going. I like Wake Forest and NC State sort of offensive systems. I think Wake Forest would lose their good quarterback for the year to an injury, though. But I don't know. ACC football isn't it's not the best product on the field, but they're just fun to watch. I don't know what Florida State's going to be this year.
Well, I mean, when they were able to beat such a powerhouse as Duskinen, it's hard to write off that victory right there. But I hated seeing the Sam Hartman news because I had an early season bet on Wake Forest being a surprise ACC champion in that one.
Yeah, that does hurt. That does hurt them. They won 10 games last year, 11 games.
Yeah, I mean that was a solid performance out there.
Threw for 30+ touchdowns, rushed for 10 more or something. He was a good player. How do you feel about the Miami Cristobal hire?
I'm glad that you're seeing money being pumped to that program. I mean, that's kind of one of the interesting things that Miami has been such a resource lacking program for all of its past glory. I mean, I'm still kind of see it to believe it mode with there. I think Van Dyke's a little overrated. I got nothing against Cristobal, but I'm also not gee whiz by him either. I think they're probably the best team in the state right now, but again, I'm in wait and see mode with them generally. I think the real interesting thing about the ACC though is I think that we're watching the slow decline of Clemson generally.
Yeah.
I think Dabo is not a I think Dabo is a hell of a rah-rah coach, right? I think he's someone who maximizes talent. But he's not someone who's adjusting well to the changes in recruiting. He's not someone that adjusts as well to the transfer portal. I don't think that he is the same sort of system builder that you kind of need to excel in big boy college football right now. Maybe he'll prove me wrong this year, but you have defensive coordinator goes to Oklahoma, which has really been. I mean, that's one of the strengths of Clemson is that you've had stability at that position. The quarterback they had last year was a bust, right? Dabo has a lot of success, but he had success with Deshaun Watson and Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah.
Taking nothing away from those seasons. I mean, it's easy to lose with a great quarterback, but he's like someone who had two incredible, all-decade team quality quarterbacks that really helped elevate that team. And I'm wondering if we're seeing kind of the separation of the wheat from the chaff there. That in terms of long-term team dynasties, I'm just not sure if Clemson's going to be up for it.
Yeah, I don't think with DJ Ugalele, did I say that right?
Yeah.
I don't think he finishes the season as a starter. They brought in, I think, a 5-star quarterback, and I think that you'll eventually see calls for him to come in because every time I watched him, I was not impressed
He's
at
awful.
all. Yeah.
It has the potential to be a Jalen Hurts to a Tagovailoa situation where I think Clemson is still going to be the best team in the ACC, but that quarterback situation and just like the general competitiveness, like I see it being something that continues to play itself out as the season progresses, and it's going to go back and forth. And I don't think he ends up finishing the season as the starter necessarily, especially if they do make it to the college playoff. And that's I don't know that I'm necessarily sold that they would be the third or fourth team in the playoff. Like that seems.
Yeah, I don't think an ACC team's going to the playoff this year.
Clemson will really have to run the table, I think, to pull it off. I mean, I think they're the only kind of team on the stage right now that has that sort of potential. I mean, maybe Miami exceeds my expectation there, but it's going to take an undefeated ACC team, or a Clemson losing to a scrappy, overperforming Notre Dame team, by a small margin there. But it's going to be difficult for them.
Yeah, I think Clemson will win the league. I think it'll be Miami in the ACC championship, but they'll win it with 2 losses and we'll go to a major bowl and not the playoff.
Well, I'm just interested to see Georgia Tech, another team spiraling the drain there. And again, I just hate to see it. One of my favorite bets of the weekend, Clemson minus 22 with the over under 51 points. And I'm hammering Clemson, and I'm hammering the under all day long. I don't think Georgia Tech's going to be able to score. I think their max is 14 points. You add 22 to that, you don't get anywhere near 51. So that's one of my favorite plays. Love to work into a parlay, hitting both of those. That's my hater special. Betting against Florida, the under. Betting against Georgia Tech in the under. Give me that every day of the week.
There we go. Let's move to the Big 12, unless we have anything more on the ACC.
I'm good.
All right. Big 12. Does Baylor repeat?
No.
You disrespect the Bears?
No, I don't disrespect the Bears. I think last year was fluky. I don't think they do it again. I think Oklahoma will be back in better position, in better shape, and they'll be able to kind of. I think Oklahoma will be that 4th playoff team possibly. I think they have a chance to have a really good season and kind of pull back out of that slump that they had last year. I just don't trust. I don't hate Baylor. I just don't trust them to have that. I don't trust that they have enough depth and roster talent to do it a second time.
My housemate's a big Baylor guy, and I asked him, I was like, so what So what does Baylor look like this year? And the guy who started most of their games at quarterback last year transferred away, and he was serviceable. They're expecting the guy who's replacing him. He played, I think, in the Big 12 championship game to be even better. They bring back both of their lines, defensive and offensive lines, which is obviously a good indication of repeating success. But I guess they lost like all of their skill position players. So that's the big thing with Baylor. I'm not as high on Oklahoma as you are. I think losing Lincoln Riley, I like Lincoln Riley as a coach. I think losing him will be a pretty big deal. And even last year, Oklahoma, like you said, they kind of, they struggled through an 11-2 season last year. Their offense wasn't quite as sharp as it usually is. I'm not sure who the quarterback is there. The Big 12 is where my darkest of dark picks comes from. 5-7 Texas. Quinn Ewers is going to be a Heisman finalist.
There you go.
They're going to win the Big 12. I think they have the best offense in the Big 12. I think Ewers is a good quarterback. I mean, we haven't seen him really in live action. I think he's a good quarterback. Obviously, Bijan Robinson, their running back, is top 5 in the nation, and they got a good stable of receivers there as well. And I think Sarkisian in his second year will be a lot more organized, and their defense will take a leap forward.
I definitely, Sarkisian, I think is, he's building something that is worth taking note of. I mean, they're hitting, obviously hitting the recruiting trail very, very well. It wouldn't surprise me at all. Again, it's one of those teams where I feel like Texas is back every year.
Yeah, there is that.
So, this might be the year, though. Past performance is not indicative of future results. But it's definitely gonna be an interesting one. I think that, for one, just how lucky is Baylor to really be knocking it out with some of these coaching hires. I know that. Obviously there's a major shadow, right, over who's the offensive the rate.
Art Briles.
Yeah, so obviously there's a big shadow over the Art Briles era, but still, man, could they play ball?
That guy was a coach.
And then you had Rule, and now you've got the current administration there. I don't know what their booster setup is like, but that is a team that is able to nail some coaching hires. I'll give them that. But yeah, I think Texas is probably the favorite there. I think Oklahoma is definitely, again, I think you're absolutely correct that Lincoln Riley it's difficult to replace, and it's one thing to I think that you can scheme up talent beyond on the offensive side of the ball. I think you can elevate talent with a great scheme. I think defense, it takes a while to kind of install the players and the coaches that you need to really play a consistent, hard-nosed defense. And I think Variables is going to need a little bit to install his stamp on the defensive side of the ball there. I can't remember who their offensive coordinator is, but I'd go with Texas as well.
Before going to the Pac-12, we just need to give the best coach in the Big 12 a mention, which is Mike Gundy. I love that guy.
He's still a man.
He is.
He'll always be 40 in our hearts.
He's actually over 40 now, but he's definitely still a man. Does Lincoln Riley win the Pac-12 in his first year?
I refuse to give him that. I still think Utah is a competitor there. I'm gonna ride with Utah on that one, in part just because I don't like Lincoln Riley. I can respect the hell out of him, but I don't like him. I don't like USC. Don't like the state of California. I don't know who to root for in a legal battle between Gavin Newsom and USC and UCLA. So I'm going to go with Utah just because that makes me feel better. We don't have money on the line there. I do not have any division bets on the Pac-12 precisely because of this emotional attachment I have there.
I'm going with USC, but I could definitely see Utah winning that league too. Utah punched Oregon in the mouth twice last year. I think both games are like 38-7, and Oregon was a good team, but Utah is just more physical than any other team in the Pac-12.
Well, and that's kind of been the maybe critique of Pac-12 football a lot of times is that it's not a super physical league. It's kind of soft and squishy. So if you do have a team that, and that's like when USC was really good back in the 90s and early 2000s, they had those punch you in the mouth type of football teams, and that's not typical for the Pac-12. So that's where they're really competitive. And like I agree, like I think Oregon has a good year. I think UCLA and USC both have really good years, but when push comes to shove, it's still a gladiator type sport, and the team that has the most dudes who are ready to stand up and punch you in the mouth is probably going to be the one that comes away with the win. And so that's going to be Utah.
All right, though, your playoff picks, your Heisman winner, and the Georgia-Oregon line you got for us.
Yes, I'm definitely gonna put Georgia and Alabama in the playoffs again. I'm just I don't think. I think Georgia will go into the SEC championship game undefeated. I guess I should be betting against Alabama then, because if I think Georgia's going to win the SEC title, I'm still going to go with that. I'm going to play the safe pick there. I'm going to take. I don't want to do a repeat of last year because I want to put Michigan in there because I kind of side with you on the Big Ten side of it. Give me Utah in there. I like them in the Pac-10. I think they'll go. I think they'll lose one game on the year, and I'll throw in. Let me ride with. Let me go with Michigan. So we'll go Georgia, Michigan, Utah, and let's throw in Texas instead of Alabama. I'm going to go big. I'm going to say Georgia beats a one-loss Alabama team in the SEC championship.
And then your Heisman winner and your.
So I'm going to go with a pure emotional and financial play there. I'm going to go with Stetson Bennett. I think Stetson Bennett's going to have a lot more opportunities to throw the ball this year. I feel like the Heisman at this point, like it's so much dependent upon performance of team. I think it's so much to do with the name recognition at this point. Again, I really hate the Heisman Trophy. Like, I wish that you had more defensive players within it. I think the process there has taken away a little bit from what that award really should be. In the process, but unfortunately, college football is eroding in many different ways. So I'm gonna go with Stetson Bennett, and definitely give me at 66-1 odds. I think people are gonna be surprised by just how many points Georgia scores this year. I think we're looking at 40+ games for most of the season, and I think Stetson has just enough swag to kind of help on the media trail.
Georgia versus
Oregon, cool $3,000. Yeah, so I definitely want that. And Georgia, I think Georgia's going to cover. It's 17 points right now. I like nothing against Dan Lammy. I hope it's going to be very interesting to see how he turns Oregon, from a historically high flying program to something of a more muscular powerhouse out there. I don't think this is the year to do it. I think that it's a big change for that team right there. Maybe Kirby holds off the dogs at the end of it a little bit to not mess up too big. I think the best way to play Georgia Oregon is to bet the over Georgia at halftime. That way, if you have any late in the game sort of shenanigans going on, then you don't have to worry about that. You cash your ticket in at halftime, and that right now is just -10. So give me that all day long. All money in, bet the legal limit. Georgia -10 at half against Oregon.
You heard it here first. Justin, you got playoff picks?
Oh, I was gonna say, I guess those got an out. But yeah, so I'd already mentioned I've got Oklahoma coming out of the Big 12. I think they're the one that sneaks in. I like Alabama, Georgia, just because I can't see betting against either of them with as strong as they have been and tend to continue to be. If there was one that was going to miss the playoffs, I would agree that it would be Bama, because I think Bama still wins the SEC West with one loss. I don't see them running the table in the West just because it is such a strong conference or such a strong division. And then then that always opens up the possibility that if they don't win the SEC championship game, then they've got 2 losses. And I don't think that they would get in with 2 losses. It's happened before, but I don't see it happening. But I don't think that happens. I think Bama wins the SEC, and both Georgia and Bama end up in the national championship game again. So those are the 2. I am not really confident on what Harbaugh is doing with quarterback situation right now in Michigan. So I think Ohio State ends up, and that could all play itself out by the end of the year, but it's one of those things that if it's shaky now, it's probably going to be shaky then. So I've got Ohio State coming out of the Big Ten. So Ohio State and so I got Oklahoma, Bama, and then Ohio State, Georgia. And I already mentioned I think Tennessee has a surprisingly good year, wins 10 games, and Hooker is going to be the surprise Heisman. I think he's going to have an excellent year.
I've got Alabama, Georgia, Michigan, and I'll throw 2-loss Texas in there as the Big 12 champ. One of the reasons that they're in there is because Quinn Ewers has a Heisman year.
Nice.
And,
There you go.
Let's call it a season.
All right.
See you next week.
All right, guys.